Hello there friends, it's David here from Beyond the Kingdoms, and I hope you're all doing well, staying at home, and healthy. In this week's episode of my Hidden Details at Walt Disney World series, we return to Epcot. You may recall that last week I shared with you 17 hidden details and Easter eggs in Future World. So today we are venturing over to World Showcase to explore 27 hidden details around the lagoon. If you're new to Beyond the Kingdoms, welcome, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you never miss an episode. But we've got a lot of exploring to do today with 11 countries to visit. So let's not waste any more time and jump right in. In today's tour, I'm going to share a mix of hidden landmarks in the pavilions, fun facts, and a few hidden Mickeys. In terms of the landmarks around World Showcase, I'm going to skip the more obvious choices and focus on the lesser known ones. For example, I can't count the Eiffel Tower as a hidden landmark because that one is pretty much well known to everybody. So hopefully some of these not so obvious choices will be fun ones for you to explore on your next trip to Epcot. And naturally, let's start today's tour in Mexico. Now, the obvious landmark here is the temple on the outside of the pavilion. But this isn't really a recreation of one specific temple in Mexico, because it actually draws inspiration from several different ancient Mesoamerican cultures. Disney has stated that the main outline is inspired by a real Mayan temple called El Castillo, but also features smaller details inspired by the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl. So it's an interesting blend of multiple cultures. Therefore, the hidden landmark I want to share with you is on the inside. When you arrive at Plaza de los Amigos, you get to witness a beautiful evening in a Mexican square filled with stunning colonial architecture. But after heading down the side ramps and circling around the central fountain, look back at the landing where you first entered from. Imagineers have stated that this part of the square is meant to be the balcony of the mayor's house. While it's not a recreation of a specific house in Mexico, the town here in the pavilion is really inspired by Taxco, a small colonial town 100 miles south of Mexico City. But for some hidden Mickeys, you have to ride the Grand Fiesta Tour with the Three Caballeros. Now, the first hidden Mickey may be easier to see from the restaurant or queue area. As you pass the Mayan temple, look for a volcano in the background. Every few minutes, some smoke puffs out, and the clouds will form the shape of a classic hidden Mickey. But the hidden detail that I really like on this ride is in the Dia de los Muertos section, where you'll see a hidden Donald. It's pretty obvious, so maybe it doesn't really count as a hidden detail, but I think little ones will enjoy spotting this Donald Piñata. Let's now travel to another exotic land across World Showcase Lagoon, Morocco. This pavilion certainly takes the prize as the most detailed and beautiful. At the very front of the pavilion, you'll of course see a huge tower, which is a copy of the one seen in Marrakesh. This tower is a replica of the minaret, part of the mosque in the fourth largest city in Morocco. But like so many pavilions in World Showcase, there are subtle architectural nods to other cities. My favorite being this archway. This is a near exact copy of a famous archway found in the city of Fez. It features the same trio of archways and the mosaic tile pattern on the face of it. The real version marks the entrance to the Old Town Market in Fez, which is appropriate here at Epcot since it leads you directly to a smaller outdoor bazaar. And here's a fun fact. The reason this pavilion seems to be the most detailed is because it's the only Epcot pavilion that has been supervised by the government of the real country. King Hassan II sent real artists from Morocco to Disney Imagineers to design and work on all of the specific ornate details. This is why it's one of my favorite pavilions in World Showcase. But just next door to Morocco is my #1 fave country to visit at Epcot, Japan. This is, in my humble opinion, one of the most beautiful interpretations of a real country in Epcot, and one of the more accurate ones. Japan is filled with several nods to famous landmarks throughout the country. You can't ignore the iconic Torii Gate at the very front of the pavilion, which is a replica of the one seen at Itsukushima Shrine. But on the complete opposite end of the pavilion is another famous landmark. The towering building at the back of the pavilion, which leads into the back end of the department store, is inspired by Himeji Castle. The World Heritage Site is known to be the most visited castle in Japan and an excellent example of classic Japanese architecture. Now, Disney's version omits the tallest part of the complex, but the 2 towers in front of it can be seen here at Epcot. In fact, this was meant to be the entrance of a scrapped attraction for the pavilion. But my mouse fans should note that there are a few hidden Mickeys found in this country. I know for a fact that there's a great hidden Mickey on a piece of drainage in the fish pond, right by Katsura Grill. For some reason, I don't seem to have a picture or video of it, but trust me, it's there. So instead, I wanted to include this guy. About halfway through the Mitsuokoshi store, cast members are known to place some umbrellas by this circular window to emulate a classic Mickey shape. Alright, sticking to the Asian continent, let's next take a stop at China. While the film inside the pavilion showcases several locations throughout this massive country, the architecture found outside is heavily influenced by what you would see in Beijing, the country's capital, of course. Now, this is one of those few countries where the landmarks are huge and very obvious. To my knowledge, there are no smaller hidden landmarks to discover. The biggie here is Disney's recreation of the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvest, which is part of the Temple of Heaven complex in Beijing. But my favorite landmark that I want to highlight is really easy to walk past and ignore. It's the huge Gate of the Golden Sun at the very entrance. This is a near exact replica of a similar gate found at the Summer Palace in Beijing. And on the rooftop corners of the gate and other buildings throughout the pavilion, you'll spot a second hidden detail. On these rooftop corners, you'll see a small figure with 5 creatures behind them, followed by a dragon. It is customary throughout China to see a tableau of figures like this on the rooftops of the buildings. The man at the front is meant to be Prince Min, a 3rd century ruler known for torturing his subjects. After his reign, and as a warning to future rulers, Chinese people placed him on rooftops with multiple creatures behind him to ensure that the evil ruler would not escape. Another example of extreme detailed work by Disney Imagineers here at Epcot. Okay, we're about halfway through our tour of World Showcase, so let's next begin our tour of the romantic countries, starting off with Italy. As you can tell, this pavilion heavily draws inspiration from Venice. From the gondolas at the front of the pavilion to Disney's recreation of St. Mark's Square. This place screams Venice. But if you look more closely, you'll start to notice that as you travel further back into the pavilion, you're simultaneously traveling further south of the country. Right in the middle of the pavilion, you'll see this small fountain off to the side. It is said that this fountain is inspired by the world-famous Trevi fountain in Rome. The real version is much larger, of course, stretching to over 160 feet wide. And it actually has a different figure placed in the middle. The real Roman version features Oceanus, the Greek god of the river. Disney's version depicts Neptune, the Roman god of water and the sea. I guess Imagineers wanted to show a Roman god as opposed to a Greek one to avoid some confusion. But the general silhouette and archway around Neptune is very reminiscent to the Trevi fountain. If you have the chance to visit Rome yourself in the future, there is a fountain dedicated to Neptune in another part of the city. And here's a fun fact inside the pavilion. If you dine at Via Napoli, which I highly recommend for the best pizza at Disney World, you'll spot some more tributes to famous locations in Italy. On the back wall of the show kitchen, you'll see 3 fireplaces. This is where the pizzas are cooked. Look above each fireplace and you'll see that the ovens are named after 3 iconic volcanoes in southern Italy. Etna, which is located in Sicily, Stromboli, which is just off the coast of Sicily, and Vesuvius, the legendary volcano that erupted over Pompeii and also overlooks the city of Naples, home of the best pizza you'll find in the world. Next, we have France, one of the most beloved pavilions by Epcot fans. Disney's version of this European country is undoubtedly focused on the city of Paris. We have the Eiffel Tower in the back and so many details of what you would see on the riverbanks of the Seine. But deep inside the pavilion is another famous landmark. The adored patisserie at the back of France and near the exit to the cinema pays homage to a famous Parisian market. Les Halles was once the largest food market in Paris and a fitting tribute at Disney for a quick service restaurant. As you can see in this picture, there was a large metal triangular roof on the center part of the market, which you can see replicated inside this building at Epcot. It's where the seating and shopping area is located. The huge market was demolished in 1971 and is now sadly home to a modern-day shopping mall. But you'll notice the name of the famous market at the nearby metro stop. But let's now take a look at some hidden Mickeys. On the outside of Vins de France, which is the wine shop adjacent to the entrance of the cinema, you'll notice some gold molding around the exterior facade. Look at the top of this gold piece and you'll spot a classic hidden Mickey. And on the inside of the wine store, you'll also spot a hidden Remy. For a couple of years now, cast members have not so secretly placed a Remy plush doll at the top of some shelving. Not to be confused with the hidden Remys for the scavenger hunt during Food and Wine. But for our final hidden Mickey in France, you have to watch the iconic Impressions de France film. Now, I only just learned about this one myself, but allegedly in the wedding scene, you'll see a classic hidden Mickey on one of the windows of the house during the after party. It's located in the most central screen of the theater. Again, I haven't captured this one on film, but if you spot it next time you visit, make sure you let me know. Okay, our next stop is another fan favorite and a very popular pavilion, Norway. This country is filled with great hidden details, celebrating the country's culture and some Epcot history. The obvious landmarks here, of course, the Stave Church and the Fortress, which is home to a princess character meal. The church is a beautiful recreation of the very few Stave churches left in Norway, but my favorite hidden landmark is actually part of the expanded area of this pavilion at the Royal Summer House. This is Anna and Elsa's meet and greet at Epcot and meant to be the family's summer home. This is where the 2 sisters used to spend their summer vacations with the family. But before stepping inside, study the exterior of the house and you'll soon realize that it is almost exactly like the exterior of a building in the rural department of Norway's open-air Museum of Cultural History, located in Trondheim. But step inside the meet and greet and you'll start to discover the many hidden Easter eggs paying tribute to the fan favorite ride, Maelstrom. As we all know, Frozen Ever After replaced the fan favorite Maelstrom, which took guests through a series of Norwegian landscapes, encountering Vikings, trolls, and a few furry friends along the way. And there are actually 3 references to the original ride in the pavilion. The first can be found while waiting in line at the Royal Summer House to meet Anna and Elsa. There's a large banner featuring the 3-headed troll creature from the 1988 Epcot Classic. But for the remaining 2, you have to get on another boat ride. At the very climax of Frozen Ever After the drop with the Marshmallow Man, you'll arrive at Arendelle. At this point, look very quickly to your right, and you'll see some puffins reused from the original attraction. But my favorite hidden detail is actually in the queue area. When you enter Oaken's trading post, which is only in the standby queue, look up into the ceiling. You'll spot a small wooden figure paying tribute to the polar bear scene on the original ride. I know many Disney fans still mourn the loss of Maelstrom, but its spirit still lives on deep inside this pavilion. Okay, next we have Germany, another fan favorite, and one of the only pavilions that focuses on a single region of a country. In this case, the pavilion mainly showcases Bavaria. Since Epcot opened before the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, Imagineers wanted to avoid any recreations seen in the capital city. This fairy tale-esque recreation of southern Germany was the perfect setting for a Disney theme park and a smart way to avoid any reminders of modern-day politics. Now, most of you are probably familiar with St. George's tribute at the very center of the square, but my favorite hidden landmark here is the exterior of Das Kaufhaus. This building is a recreation of the historical merchant hall in Freiburg, a medium-sized city in southern Germany. The real version is known by its deep red color and decorative row of statues. The four kings depicted here are some of the most well-known rulers of Germany. Disney's version here condenses it down to 3, given that there's less space to work with. You'll see Philip, Charles, and Ferdinand. And here's a bonus for you. At the very center of Philip's crown, you'll see a very small hidden Mickey. That's always been one of my favorites to look for. But before we move on to our next country, here's one more fun fact about Germany. In between this country and Italy, you'll see a very popular and expansive miniature train set. I've always been obsessed with miniature models, so I always enjoy making a stop here. This train set was originally placed here during Epcot's Flower and Garden Festival in 1995. It was one of those temporary gardens as seen throughout the festival, but fans loved it so much, it later became a permanent piece of the pavilion. These days, the decor in the town changes throughout the year to celebrate whatever festival is currently running at Epcot. Okay guys, we're getting very close to the end here, and we're now going to cross the lagoon, visiting a pavilion with a very special place in my heart, the United Kingdom. This country is extra special for me since my husband is British and I used to live there myself. Now, some of you are probably aware that the exterior facades on the buildings in the central high street tell a little story. Each building represents a different century or era of architecture found in Britain, and also represents different regions throughout the country. For example, the exterior of the Tea Caddy shop is meant to be inspired by Anne Hathaway's cottage in Stratford-upon-Avon. And the exterior of Crown and Crest draws from the architecture seen at Abbotsford House. This is located in Scotland. But my favorite landmark is at the very front of the pavilion and the exterior to the Sportsman shop. This red brick building is directly inspired by Hampton Court Palace, one of King Henry VIII's most beloved palaces. This Tudor structure can be found in the outskirts of London, and it's actually one of the most beautiful you'll find in the capital. Most tourists flock to the Tower of London, which is spectacular, but Hampton Court Palace is a little hidden gem that's adored by the locals. Now, one of the most iconic hidden Mickeys can be seen on one of the signs outside the Sportsman shop. A collection of sporting equipment silhouettes come together to form a hidden Mickey. And sadly, I can't seem to find a picture of it, but trust me, it's definitely there. And finally, we arrive to our neighbors of the north, Canada, another stunning representation in World Showcase. This pavilion is rather interesting because it combines landmarks that stretch from the east to the west, also incorporating its French roots and First Nations people, but still distinctly Canadian. Now, I know I said I was going to skip the obvious landmarks, but I love the central building so much that I really just wanted to talk about it. And it does tie into an important feature on our final stop in today's tour. The tall chateau in the center of Canada is Disney's interpretation of Château Laurier, which is found in the capital city of Ottawa. This chateau is part of a larger network of famous hotels throughout the country. In fact, another chateau very similar to this one can be seen in the Canada Far and Wide film. Le Château Frontenac calls Quebec its home, and it's located in the city's historical district. You'll notice that this building and the one in Ottawa have some similarities to them. Now, Disney's historical chateau is a great example of forced perspective. This 3-story building is designed to look like 5. As you go further up the building, the windows get smaller and the angles get sharper. The second floor, which is at the top of the hill, used to be the location of a store. And the bottom level, or basement of course, is home to Le Celleir, which takes us to our final hidden detail here. The next time you dine at this signature restaurant, take a look at the wine collection in the check-in area. At the very top of the wine shelf, some bottles have been turned around and depict a classic hidden Mickey. But I do believe that cast members are known to change the exact location of this guy from time to time. Okay guys, and for our final stop today, we arrive at the American Adventure, the host pavilion of World Showcase. Unlike every other pavilion around the lagoon, this one depicts one specific building only, and that's because 90% of the pavilion is taken up by a massive animatronic show, meaning that there's no real hidden landmarks here. But the exterior of the American Adventure has some interesting details. First of all, the colonial structure is actually inspired by a few iconic buildings in the US. The most obvious inspiration here is Independence Hall in Philadelphia, mainly used in the design of the central clock tower. But Imagineers have also confirmed that the building is somewhat inspired by the Old State House in Boston. But I think that the real-life landmark that influenced this building the most is Governor's Palace in Williamsburg, Virginia. And here's one more fun fact before I let you go. You know how I said over in Canada there's a great example of forced perspective? The American Adventure is one of the very few times that Imagineers reversed that. This building is meant to look only 3 stories tall, when in fact it's 5 stories tall. The windows get shaped differently as you travel up the building to help the illusion out. And you'll also notice that the American Adventure is placed on a small hill. And that's really to help the overall sightline of World Showcase, specifically when you look at this country next to the others from across the lagoon. Since America is framed by 2 very tall towers in Japan and Italy, the pavilion was raised a bit to make everything seem a little bit more even. Everything is all about balance and making everything seem even as one. So there you have it, friends, 27 hidden details inside World Showcase at Epcot. That was a whopper of an episode. And if you want more hidden details in this park, make sure you check out last week's episode, Exploring Future World. Now, even though this section of the park doesn't reference any specific Disney movies, I'm currently curating a fun movie list for you to enjoy that ties in the landmarks in World Showcase, as well as some hidden details and references in Future World. Some of the films and TV specials in this movie list is definitely geared towards the adults wanting to enjoy some more educational films. But don't worry, I've included tons of Disney movies inspired by the countries and cities seen in World Showcase. That's for my little ones out there. Stay tuned next week as I continue this series with a look at hidden details inside Animal Kingdom. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and remember, if you can dream it, you can do it.